Are we good to go on? I see. We've got the session being recorded. Thank you for setting it up so nicely. And hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. So the first thing I want to say is I'm so excited about this. And thank you. I'm really grateful and humbled that you had me on as a presenter. I'm really excited to do this presentation. So let's jump in. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay, I hope you all can see my screen. And now to get something relevant on it. All right, can you all see my screen right here? I wonder if there's a way for me to join from my phone as well so I can see what's happening in the chat. And so I'm just going to join as Aditi too from my phone. Da-da-da. Okay, I think it's working. Sorry about that. Is it echoing for all of you? I hope not. Excellent. It's better now. That is great. Okay. So, hi everyone. I hope you can see my screen. I can now see the chat on my phone, which is great because I'm going to ask everyone to write things in the chat as we go along. So if you can see my screen and you can see the chat, say hi in the chat. Okay, so let's get started. As you see and as I've been so nicely introduced, my name is Aditi. I'm a design manager at Local Theory, and maybe that sounds a little fancy. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like it sounds fancy, and I kind of have to pinch myself. But uh, essentially, it means that someone's paying me to do design, which I'm always thrilled about. And a little background is that I started in engineering at the National Institute of Technology, NITK Suratkal. So I've graduated with electrical and electronics engineering, and I did a whole thing where I moved over to design. And today, that's what I'm here to talk to you about. Some of my work as a designer, what it's like to design a user experience. And I want to make this interactive so that hopefully you all can get something out of it and apply to some projects of your own. So let's kind of so this is this is how excited I really am. Like, this is the sophisticated picture, but this is how excited I really am. So I'm really glad to be here. Let's start with just like a quick introduction. Tell me in the chat, put your name and maybe your favorite ice cream. And I'll start by putting mine. So I'll say Aditi, and if I want to be outrageous, I'll say mustard ice cream. There we go. But if I want to be realistic, I'm very basic and I just go for chocolate every time. Yeah. So who all else is on here? Are you able to find the chat on the right hand side? Aha, lots of people have found the chat. This is excellent. Anshuman Tiramisu. Oh, wow, they're going so fast I can almost not read them. Fatweer, chocolate. Jayuj, Oreo. Wow. Ankita, vanilla. BBC, death by chocolate. That's delicious. Annette, vanilla. Joshita, vanilla. Lots of vanilla. Coffee, raspberry. Okay, that's real fun. Okay, so now that we have that, and we've all gotten set up on the chat, and we're all thinking about the ice cream we're going to eat right after this, tell me about, since we're all taking an hour out of our day, okay, this is our time together. What are you interested in hearing from this talk? Tell me a bit about why you got interested in this talk. Is it because, oh, the people in my university were organizing it, and so I thought, or is it, I have a project in which I want to apply UX and stuff like that. So tell me a bit about why you're interested in the session, what you want to hear about in this session, so that I can kind of tailor my talk a bit, make it useful, make it a useful use of your 1 hour right here. So again, if you can put it in the chat, that will be super helpful. So for example, I can say, I want to meet new people, and I'm meeting all of you, right? Yeah. So the rest of you, I'm really looking forward to hearing what you want to hear about in this session. Are any of you students? Who's a student here? Okay, so Shruti says just some exposure, and Shruti struggles with creativity and anything artistic. Julia is interested in a career as a UX designer. Nikhil took a product development course, with concepts and design. Oh, okay. Looking to learn more about the subject. Okay, so we've got kind of the range from some of you who want to move your whole career over, um, to some people who kind of want to know more. Um, I want to hear about the professional journey. Oh, that's really interesting. So this, Anshuman, this talk isn't going to cover as much about the professional journey. I can talk a little bit about it if we have some time in, but I'm also going to be talking in the panel tomorrow, and that will definitely cover more of the professional journey. Best practices for UI and UX. Yeah, that's a good one. How to make good UX design. We'll definitely be covering that. Okay, awesome. I think we've got a good range of things. Keep putting your thoughts in the chat on this. I'll keep reading it. So now let's get into what do you all know currently of UX and UI? What do you think UX is? What do you think UI is? I know there's probably a lot of different messages about what it is. So what do you know about it so far? Kind of leveling up, where are you, what kind of, do you find it exciting, do you think it's something totally confusing? What do you think UX is? What do you think UI is? So again, put it in the chat. Go ahead. Interesting, Nikhil. The layer that connects technology with the user, the emotional aspect of a product, that these are all good things. A design for any product. Keep going. Okay, these are wonderful. And I'm sure some of you might have seen kind of these these confusing charts. They're very detailed. It's good to get into them at some point, but maybe not right as you begin. But I'm sure you've seen some of these charts and whatnot. Um, but really, I think what we're going to talk about is building a user experience. And let's say you have an idea and you want to make this a product, or a service, or an app, a website, which you want to put into someone's hands, and you want them to be able to use it. We're going to talk about what this fuzzy process looks like, and how sort of you can go from an idea you might have to a product that someone can use, right? So that's kind of what we're going to do. And maybe at a really high level, UX, which is user experience, uh, is the discipline of building out whatever your users' experience of your product might be from the time they start. They have an introduction to your product right when they, let's say, download an app, or if you're building a service, they walk into a store, um, right until sort of they finish their whatever that introduction is. So let's say they make a purchase, or they sign up and then they start using the app and they've used it, over to even post purchase. So designing all of that is the user experience, and the user interface is similar to what it sounds like. It's whatever interface the user has, and designing and building that user interface. So thinking about what the person actually sees and touches and clicks and all of that. So let's uncomplicate this a bit. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to loosely follow the design thinking framework, which has come out of the Stanford D School. And this is only one model that you can follow. There's lots and lots of different models, but I like this because it's a fairly well-known model. It's been tested by extensive use. It's also, it simplifies things to a good degree. So I love to start out with this, and then I tend to dig deeper whenever I need to. And I will say that, there's no model which covers absolutely everything. So let's say this model may not be as as deep in its coverage of, will this be a sustainable business plan? Is this feasible for my engineering team? But I think it's a lovely place to start, because this whole kind of side of things it answers the question of, what do my users want? What kind of product do they want? And what do they want to use? Because I feel like that's one of the three fundamental questions. The other two are the business plan and the engineering feasibility, but it's one of the three fundamental questions, and it is the whole of the user experience and the user interface. So we're going to kind of go through this. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through the theory at a very high level very quickly. And then we're going to really dig into a case study. And hopefully, while I'm digging into the case study, all of you can pick a product or a project that you either wanted to work on or you are working on right now. And I'll give you all some guiding questions that we can go through really quickly as we go through this. Okay. So let's get into it. So here's the high level theory. This isn't going to be enough to, of course, know everything about it, but let's run through the high level theory so we have a grounding for our case study. Okay, so the high level theory is, the first phase of design thinking is really to empathize. And there's a lot of fancy ways to say this, but really what it means is get to know your user, uh, talk to your user, understand everything you need to know, their problem points, how they use this product, or how they use existing products if your product doesn't exist yet, and really what is their life like, what is their current user journey like, what are their pain points, why would they use your product, right? And this is the whole point of the empathize phase, in which you are trying to really get into the head and into the shoes of your user and trying to see what frustrations they're facing now, how you can solve their problems, and why they would stand to gain value from a product that you are offering them, and why they would pick up a product that you are offering them. The second phase is, it's called the define phase, and I think it's the way I think about it is that empathize in the whole empathize phase, you go really broad. You talk to lots of users. It feels like it's a very brain expanding phase. But in define, you've got to start to converge, because I'm sure in our daily lives as people who use products, all of us as users have various different frustrations. But every product cannot solve every frustration. And so, as someone who's building and designing a product, you've got to define which problems you are going to solve for your user, right? So, when it comes to the define phase, you really have to make a bunch of decisions and converge and define which problems you want to solve for your user. But I think that it's a phase which sometimes I find difficult, because decision making can be difficult. But then after that, you get to leap into the ideate phase, where after you've defined which problem you want to solve, you now get to come up with ideas for how to solve that problem. And the whole point is to come up with lots and lots of ideas. I know people don't say this often, but it really is quantity over a quality of ideas, uh, because right now the whole point of the ideate phase is to get all the ideas out, and we can choose the ones that we want to focus on later. Like we can say, okay, I spat out 10 ideas, five of them are actually not so great, but two or three of them will be good ones, and I'm going to pick those. So that's kind of a process which helps me a lot. And the reason is, the reason that it's important to come up with lots of ideas and also speak out and bring out the bad ideas along with the good ones, is because it's very hard to make the judgment in your head whether an idea is a good or bad one. Also, sometimes the ideas that you think about actually turn out to be decent, or you can modify that idea and make it a decent one. Um, After that, you take a bunch of the ideas you came up with in the ideate phase, and you give them a sort of a shape, right? Whether you make a 2D prototype or a 3D prototype, or you're going to kind of do a storyboard, a skit kind of thing, you have to give your idea some sort of shape, and this allows you to test out what do users really think of your ideas. um, are they following along the path of assumptions that you're making? Are your assumptions reasonable? Or do you need to change your assumptions and kind of go back to the drawing board a bit? So on a really, really high level, this is what UX, this is kind of a process that I find helpful to follow in UX. But that was so theoretical. What does that even mean? And so let's kind of take up a case study, okay, and let's apply this in sort of a lightning round. And for this lightning round, I want all of you to pick a project idea that you will apply these concepts to, right? And I want you to put in the chat whatever your project idea is. So it could be a project that you're working on right now, or it could be an idea that you've had for a while, you haven't really had time to work on it yet. But I want everyone to pick a project idea and write in the chat, what is your project idea? So you'll see mine in just a second, and I'm going to put mine in the chat. Um, but could everyone please put a project idea for themselves in the chat? And um, if you're finding it difficult to think of a project idea right now, you can take the example I have here. I want to build an app that makes people laugh. Right? Okay. So just put in the chat, my project idea is, um, and I'm going to put the actual one for the case study in the chat because that's my project idea that I'm showcasing. But I want you to put your project idea as well. So my project idea is putting digital displays at the edge of a retail shelf. Okay, so are some of you writing down your project ideas? I'm waiting. Excellent. An extension that converts every website into a dark theme. Ooh, fancy. I would love to use that extension. I want to build a platform where people can share their mental well-being problems. That's beautiful. A Fitbit equivalent for mental health. Wow, nice. Something that stops phones from overcharging. Ah, interesting. I would like to build a platform for student interaction and peer support. Excellent. I think kind of everyone's putting their ideas down, which is great. Um, and so now that you have your idea, and I hope, even if you haven't put it into the chat, you have maybe a piece of pen and paper, you're writing it down, um, and at least you're thinking through kind of what your project idea might be. Oh, an app that recommends books on mood. That is so interesting. I would love to use this app, especially when I'm feeling like, oh, I'm creative right now. I need a book for creativity. That's a super interesting idea. Okay, so now we've got a few project ideas started. Let's kind of dive into it. All right, I'm going to first give you a bit of context. Um, and I know that a lot of people, when they start case studies, they will start at the end. They'll show you the shiny final end result. But that I've often found that a little bit intimidating when I've watched presentations and I've seen the end result even before I saw the process. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to start at the beginning, and I'm going to show you the process as it builds up and it leads into building the product that I have. And hopefully, as we go along, and all of you take this little lightning round of UX, you can start to imagine how you would build out the amazing product ideas that you've put in the chat here. and we can kind of go together on this. So let's begin. So for my project idea, it was more of a project request because this was one of the first projects I worked on when I joined my team. They said, hey, we have these digital displays. We are going into a store. So, a retail store, the kind of store that you do your shopping in. And we're going to put these digital displays at the edge of a shelf where on the coffee machines aisle. Okay, and my job was to design the label. And let me give you a little bit of quick context on, what's a digital display, where is it going to go, what does the label mean? So here we are in a store. This is where the store is selling coffee machines. It's the Keurigs and the buns and all of those kind of coffee machines. I don't have one because I'm not a coffee drinker, but a lot of my friends told me that they do have one. And over here, the label means the price label, which sits kind of at the edge of the shelf. And for me, this was when, so I've grown up in India where the price is printed on the product, the MRP price. And kind of that's what I'm very used to looking at. But over here in the US, where I am now, the price is printed on a paper label and it's kind of sitting over at the edge of the shelf. And what my team was going to do is put these digital displays over here at the edge of the shelf. So it's going to replace all of this stuff. And as you can imagine, it's really important to show the price to customers so that customers can shop for the product. So I was supposed to design what this label looks like. And I had also the freedom to put anything else in there, which you'll see in just a minute. So I hope that helps. I know some will probably be familiar with the label, but if some of you are not, that's what I mean by label. So for example, this coffee machine costs $149, but this one costs just $99, and that was the thing that I was supposed to design. It's a little different from a traditional website or an app, but I like to use this example because it really shows that the process that I'm talking about is applicable very widely, and you can put it to use on a lot of different contexts as well. So let's dive in. Um, Phase one, and this is the process I'm going to follow. I'm going to show you what we did, and then I'll suggest in a second things that you can do, and we'll give it a minute or two so that you all can think through what are some of the things you could do. So what we did was we went and looked at the products. All right, so we went to the store, and we looked at, okay, so these are the different products that exist. Here's the kind of information that gets called out right now, and these bits of information are what sort of the manufacturers of the product call out. So it looks like the manufacturers think it's important to let you know that this is a stainless steel hot water tank and this is a drip-free carafe and stuff like that. So we went into the physical store, we got out of our office, and we went and looked at this product. We also talked to coffee machine users because, as I mentioned, I don't drink coffee. I'm naturally this energetic, which baffles a lot of people who meet me. But I'm naturally this energetic. I don't drink coffee. I have never used a coffee machine. And so I really needed to get in the heads of my users and understand what it was that they needed. And so if you think about this, this is a great example of how if you are working as a designer, you really cannot rely on designing for yourself. For the first reason that you're only one person yourself, right? I'm only one person, and there's a lot of people who are very different from me. So I can't design for myself. I have to design for the people who actually use this. And the second reason is that projects you get really will depend on whatever it is your company needs to do at the moment. They may align with things that you know about, but they may not, they may not align with things that you know about. And then you just have to figure things out. You have to pick up new skills on the way. And so this is why the empathize phase, I think, is really important because inevitably, when you get a project that you know nothing about and you are not the typical user, you need some of these methods to be able to understand who the user is and what their motivations are. So this is some of the things that we did, but here's what you can do. All right. So now this is where we apply some of this in a lightning round, and of course it's not going to be as if you can design the whole product or website or app in just the half an hour that we have in this left in this session. But I want to give you some guiding questions that may start you off that way, and that may give you a little taste of things, and then there's of course so many resources online where you can keep continuing your journey. So let's start. So all of you have had some great project ideas, from the Fitbit equivalent for mental health to an app that recommends books by mood. So now put in the chat, uh, who are some people that might use your product, all right? And you could say things like, hey, my mother really likes to read books. She might be someone who uses my product. Or my best friend or my roommate are some people who might use my product. And the reason why I'm asking you to put this out there or to think through this is that's really the first step into user research, is finding a user, right? So I'm going to give it a second, and I'm going to say, put in the chat someone who uses your product, and I will put in the chat someone who used my product. So I had my colleague drank a lot of coffee. And also my friend, whose name is, we'll call her R. Okay, my friend R drinks coffee and has a coffee machine. Okay, so please put in the chat who is a user. Aha, Pratik says, I'm in a readers community and many people there ask for recommendations regularly. Oh, that's excellent. So Pratik, I think that's a great place to start off with, who are some people that might use your product. Um, and so I would recommend that you think about, one person, two people, three people, specifically in the readers community, and you go up to them when you ask them for some time, say that you're working on a project, and ask them about when's the last time you asked for recommendations. How did what did you do when you wanted a recommendation? What were some frustrating parts of the experience? Whom did you ask for recommendations? Were you happy with the recommendations? So you can ask them all of these sorts of questions. um, Nikhil says someone suffering from anxiety on a daily basis is a good user, and I think that's a great way to also talk about things, which is you're talking about an experience that a person is going through. So Nikhil, I would say, if you can think of a specific person or a few specific people who go through anxiety, um, and who experience that on a daily basis, as you said, ask them if you can have a few moments of their time, and ask them questions about when's the last time you suffered from anxiety, how what were the steps you took to resolve it, and what did it feel like, why was it frustrating. So you can ask them all of these sorts of questions to really empathize, with the way they think, with the things they go through when they are suffering from anxiety. Shruti says every gadget of my brother's is overcharged. So Shruti, I would say then that your brother's a great user, and you can definitely talk to your brother and ask for some recommendations. Nishchit says college students who want to connect and network with their peers, which I think is excellent. So Nishchit, I think it would be a great idea to pick a couple of college students, and ask them the questions that you need to ask them, right? So essentially, the key over here is to definitely always do some user research, because you will always find something which is surprising. So either people will tell you, oh yeah, that's true, but the problem's not really as big as you think, or yes, that is a problem, and here's something about the problem that you never knew about. So always do some user research, always do some empathizing. Go and talk to your users as soon as you can. All right. After you've talked to your users, you're going to feel like, wow, I suddenly know so many different things about my users, and now I'm a little overwhelmed. Now it feels like there's too much to do, or maybe it feels like I'm supposed to go in a completely different direction from where I was supposed to. And so phase two is really define, right? And over here, what you're going to do is well, we'll come to what you're going to do in a second. But what we did after, doing some of our research on coffee machines here, is we realized that if we're going to put a digital display up, the information for this coffee machine has to sit below this coffee machine, right? It can't spill over onto the next one. So we had a limited amount of space as to how much information we could show. And so we made some decisions on which information it's really, really important to show. Um, and we started doing some segmentation. We said, oh, maybe we want to show the capacity and the color and the price. Since we're trying to sell these coffee machines, the price was always very important. So the price is top priority. But it seems like colors are important. It seems like capacity is pretty important. Like, does it do 12 cups, 15 cups, only 6 cups, only 1 cup? What is it? So phase two for us was define. And here's what you can do, right? As a really, really easy way to start out in the define phase, you can write down your user's top needs. So at this point, I'm going to again ask that we, have a party in the chat, and we say that what and here right now in the chat, I think it's an excellent idea to give it your best guess. What do you think is your users' top need? So Aparna, for example, you've said programmers always appreciate a good dark theme. What do you think is the need here? Like, why do they appreciate a dark theme? Is it because it'll look cool in front of their friends or their coworkers, or is it because it's a strain on the eyes and they want to reduce that strain on the eye? So what's the top need that your users have? um, and I'm going to write down the top need that my users had. So coffee machine uh, shoppers um, need to compare easily, um, need to, well, before all of that, need to see price, need to compare easily. And sometimes you can also add a nice to. So nice to see what other people think of it. There you go. And a couple of you, I would really appreciate if you again, put it in the chat you think is the top need of your users. It's going to become really important as we move into the next phase. So put it in the chat. Okay, Aparna says the white is always glaring and actually really strains the eyes. Okay, that's a great one. So you've kind of identified that as your top need, and it's great to start out with somewhat of a put a flag in the ground for now. This is what I think my user's top need is, and then go ahead and try and verify or validate or invalidate whether that's actually someone's top need. So as we said earlier, talk to users, ask them, would you like to use dark mode? Why would you like to use dark mode? And questions like that. So um, I'm hoping some of you will also write down people's top needs. For example, with the readers community, it could be some examples are that maybe people are mm, bored of the books they read today and they want some more suggestions. Nikhil says users suffering from anxiety. The top need is knowing how to calm down when they're having an attack. That's a great one. That's an excellent one. And Nishchit says students with the socializing. People need to socialize amidst COVID and work on their career prospects. That's a great one. And Pratik says people want to find books that will interest and captivate them instead of something lackluster, and also help in improving their mood. Yeah, if they're sad, humor books could help them recover. That's a great one. I love that. And so I hope, oh, so Shruti says, my brother shouldn't have to remember or check the time when he put his phone for charge. Yeah, that's so true. Um, and so if you think about the importance of this phase, I think the reason why this phase is crucially important is that we only have a limited number of hours in the day. And that's true whether you are a student and you have so many courses and you're trying to build this project either on the side or you're trying to hit a deadline for a course. Or it's also true if you're working at a company and you have a deadline that you need to hit because your designs need to be done so that the engineering team can build it out, etc. So the importance of the define phase is that it forces us to pick something that is the most important need, and it forces us to start and get moving, right? And the second thing that I think is important is right now we're really focusing on defining what the user need is. If you notice, we haven't even thought about how we're going to build a solution for this. We've just thought of what the problem is that a user is going through, and that brings me to ideate, right? This is phase number 3, in which now you start to shift into thinking about how you can solve the user's problems. And what we did in this phase is we made a bunch of rough sketches, as you can see here. And the sketches really were very rough. So, for example, I'll just take, I don't know if you can see my video at the same time as I'm presenting, but I just take a piece of paper and I draw like a rectangle on it, and I write down, oh, so this is the price box, etc. And so this is one of the ways that we did our ideation. We came up with lots of ideas, made lots of rough sketches. So over here, I would like you to here's what you can do. Write down in terms of finding a solution to the user's top need. Write down the first idea that comes to your head. Big, bold letters. Right, that was my first idea, and kind of that's where I stopped. But Pratik, maybe with our book solution, uh, you know, think of what your first idea would be, your very first idea in terms of how you would solve the problem of they want to find books that will interest and captivate them. So would that be, maybe asking for, would that be showing them top rated books which other people have said are really great, or would that be maybe asking someone who you wouldn't normally ask for a suggestion? um, Survey. Aha, so Pratik says the first idea is a survey asking people to assign books to a genre or a mood. That's pretty awesome. So you would kind of ask people to say, how does this book make you feel, or what mood did you read it in? Um, and now, what I would encourage you to do in this ideate phase is write down one more idea. Okay, so let's say my second idea was that, hey, I want to put um, I want to put how many cups of coffee this makes. Right, so that's what I would say is write down one idea, write down a second idea, write down a really bad idea. Okay, so I'll tell you what my really bad idea was. um, or it felt like a bad idea, but it's important to write it down anyway. So my terrible idea was, put the worst review right under the coffee machine. Put the worst review. So that was my awful idea, but I think I wrote it down at some point. And then I would strongly recommend that you make just make a quick sketch. Do not focus on making it perfect. Just make a quick sketch of what your app or product or service or website or whatever it is, whatever your experience is. Make a quick sketch. Um, and then we move into so we have a lot of ideas. I would also suggest that at the end of this, you pick a couple of different ideas, so two or three ideas. Pick two or three ideas and move into the prototyping phase. What we did at this point is we said, okay, we want to make some of this stuff into a reality. So over here is when some of my amazing teammates came in, and they built a few different prototypes. They coded out a few prototypes, and kind of put them up on the screen so that we got to see this stuff. And we kind of realized a few things, that we had some constraints, like for example, coffee machines tend to have a certain width, right? And you can't. So that means that that's the amount of space that you have where you can show the data that you've got. And so we kind of put, like, when we started building out these prototypes, we realized really quickly that the constraint is how much space we have. I also made some of our prototypes with real data. So we went over, if, like, let's say we wanted to showcase a rating and a review. We went over to Walmart.com, and we found a review snippet that we wanted. So let's say, oh, this has a heated bottom which keeps the coffee at a great temperature, kind of thing. So we picked some, we used real data, and we started building out a prototype. Okay, so here's something you can do. All right, some of the things you can do at this stage is you can draw an idea. um, you can make wireframes. You can pick some of the colors and fonts and icons. You can do a really simple version of your code. You can write out an advertisement which features your product. um, and here's some examples of, in this situation, I did want to show you what prototypes can look like apart from kind of these prototypes. Um, so here's a couple of examples of wireframes. I'm also laughing at some of Nikhil's ideas, which I love. So Nikhil said, as part of the previous prompt, his first idea was to notify users and friends or family when they're having a panic attack, which I think is great. And the bad idea is to play Bob Ross quotes to calm people down, which I think is excellent. Um, so let's talk about prototypes. All right. So in the chat right now, what I would like you to write down is, what kind of prototype can you really quickly make? Can you make a drawing with pen and paper of your app or website? If you can make a drawing, then say that you can make a drawing, right? So I can say that for coffee machine shells, um, make drawings, right? So that was something which I could make. Um, what are some things that you all can make? So Shruti, let's say you have your the idea that your brother shouldn't have to remember or check when he put his phone to charge. Um, I would love to hear kind of what your idea is. Ooh, okay, lots coming in. So Aparna says her good idea is to turn the background dark and the text a light color, or a good predetermined color scheme. The bad idea is turn everything black. Yeah, I love that. And Aparna says we can draw out the layout of the extension. I think that's great, Aparna. You should definitely draw the layout of the extension. Um, and the reason it's really, really important to do the prototyping phase is because it's very easy to get stuck in the idea phase and fall in love with your ideas. But it's so important to get into the prototyping phase so that you can really test a lot of your assumptions. If you're just making drawings or with pen on a piece of paper, then you can fail really cheaply, because I'm paper costs very little. I'm sure everyone has a pen around or a pencil or something, and we can kind of make prototypes really, really quickly and show them to people. This will also probably show you that some of the ideas which you had in your head aren't working out in exactly the way you imagined them. And so you'll have to make modifications to some of those ideas that you had in your head, which I think is excellent because it gets you closer and closer to a real product that users can use. Um, Pratik says you can change the app colors according to which mood they choose. Ooh, wow. And play a related tune. So something cheery when they choose happy, something peaceful when they want to relax. I love that. That's really beautiful. Um, and so let's talk about phase five, which is testing. So in our case, because this was a project which I was doing for work, and they really wanted to see it in a store. Our version of testing was to actually go and put it in two stores. All right, we started with one, then we went to a second, and we kind of this was really interesting because this was kind of early days of my team and stuff. And so we went with all the displays and a bunch of bolts and nails, and we put it onto the shelves ourselves. So you see the nail in here. And so we did a lot of our stuff ourselves. Um, but what you can do is you can show, we talked about some of the drawings you can make, the sketches you can make. What you can do as a test is to sketch out your idea, show it to a friend, show it to your professor, show it to your mom, and kind of show your wireframes to other people. Let someone use your app. If you feel confident enough in your product, you can even take it to the next stage. So for example, when we install in a store, if you have a website idea, you can stand a website up, and you can direct people to use it, and they can become your actual users. So that's some of the things that you can do in a testing phase. I see a bunch of stuff coming up in the chat. um, Shruti's asked, how accurate does a prototype have to be and how much tech is involved? And Shruti then said, okay, so the prototype really needs to be testable. And Shruti, yeah, that's absolutely right. Really, what you need to do is, and I'm going to skip through some of these, but really, what you need to do is the whole point of a prototype is you need to understand what's your biggest risk, and get feedback on your biggest risk. Okay, so let's say with the idea of my brother should not need to know when his devices are done charging. One of the big assumptions is that this is a problem for him and that he needs a solution to it, right? So that's your riskiest assumption, because if he doesn't need a solution to it, then your idea may be amazing, but if he doesn't need it, he's not going to use it. So the first step would maybe be to make a like even have a quick survey. Just ask him, hey, is this something that you see yourself needing? um, Okay, so Nishchit says, how do you create prototypes for websites and apps which are ready for testing? So Nishchit, there's a lot of different ways you can create prototypes. One is, as you see over here on the screen, you can make kind of pen and paper prototypes, which are also ready for testing. So what you would do here is you would make a drawing of each screen of your website or your app, and you would put that in front of your user, just like you see in this picture. There's someone who's handling this phone prototype, and let's say the user presses yes. You then have to show them the pen and paper screen which corresponds to yes, or if they press no, you've got to show them the screen which corresponds to a no. So that's one way to make prototypes really quickly. A second way is you can actually build a bit of a website, and you can put fake data into it, so that as a person does some click throughs, they can see some data, and you don't have to worry about collecting like all the data. So that's a few different ways in which to make prototypes which are ready for testing. And so that kind of brings us to the end of the design thinking process, in a sense, the design thinking framework. And hopefully it leaves you with an idea of how you can take your project idea and transform it into a product, right? So you in to really summarize at a high level, you get to know your users, you define the top thing that you're going to work on, you come up with a bunch of ideas, you pick some of those ideas, you prototype them, you learn from your prototypes, and then you build it into your product. Um, the phase that people sometimes leave out of this is that there's a lot of learnings that you have. So, for example, we found that maybe there's different kinds of information that would be helpful to users, and so we had different learnings. And then once you try things out and you have a bunch of learnings, you then have to do it all over again. So we went into the mattresses category with also these digital displays. We went into the beauty category with these digital displays, and you've just got to keep iterating on it and learning. I see that there are already some questions, so let me take some of the questions. So, Jayu, you're asking, is the riskiest assumption test a part of testing? Yes, it is a part of testing. Um, it's one of the ways in which you can test. And there's a lot. Oh, at what stage should we use the risk case assumption test? You can use this at pretty much any stage that you're at. Um, and the cool thing is that it sort of evolves in a way, and you can use it pretty much at every stage. You almost should use it at every stage because let's say your riskiest assumption right in the beginning is, will people even want to use my product? Right? Let's say you test that assumption out, and then you find that yes, people do want to use my product. So that is no longer your riskiest assumption. Your next riskiest assumption might be, um, will people want to use it in a particular way? So let's say many people are very enthusiastic about downloading a certain app, but they don't sign in. So maybe that's the next riskiest assumption. So the riskiest assumption test is one that you can use at pretty much every stage, and you just keep iterating on whatever your riskiest assumption is at that point. Archit says, how do you test for scalability? Archit, so you can test in a number of different ways, and scalability can have a bunch of different meanings. So one aspect of scalability is, will enough people want to use my product? There's a few different ways of figuring this out. You can do kind of larger scale surveys. You can Yeah, larger scale surveys are a good way to do it. You can also do larger scale interviews if you want. If you're talking about kind of engineering scalability, I think that's something that you can also run tests on. You can, for example, if you're trying to test whether your website will scale up to a certain amount of traffic, you can simulate a certain amount of traffic on your website and test for scalability in that way. Um, and so I know we're coming up on time, so I'm going to wrap up. So I hope that this 1 hour of your life, which you will never get back, was useful to you. And I certainly had a great time hearing about all of your projects. I think they're amazing, and I really hope that you work on them. I hope you find that this is actually applicable to your projects. And so I'm going to, finish off with, this is me. I hope you all find this useful. I'm going to, ooh, look at that, how inception-y. So I'm not quite sure how to stop sharing. Aha, stop sharing. So yeah, okay, I've stopped sharing, and I know we're at time, but I'm just going to put my, if any of you would like to connect, I'm going to put a link to my LinkedIn into the chat. Do feel free to connect with me. I had a great time, telling all of you about my project and hearing about some of your fantastic ideas. I'm so excited for you to apply them. I hope this was helpful.
So thank you very much, Aditi, for that workshop. I'm sure everyone was very motivated and enjoyed it very much. So after this, we also have another event at 4:15. So if you want to join, it's called Life of Digital Nomad by Elena Leib. And I'm sure it'll also be very interesting. So thank you, Aditi, for this very nice workshop. And
Thank you all so
see you
much for
later.
having me. Yeah, really appreciate it.